We are stepping into a world of absolute solipsistic terror. In this explainer, we're dissecting the architecture of the total state as laid out in the first part of George Orwell's 1984. Picture the bleak province of Airstrip One. The physical world here isn't just failing, it exists in a state of terminal, grinding decay. The human mind is under perpetual siege. Oceania is a sensory desert, where the individual is systematically isolated, constantly observed, and broken. We are going to examine the exact mechanics of this paranoia and see how absolute power asserts control over objective reality itself. Think about how this begins. It's not a traditional introduction. It is a violent rupture in reality. It was a bright, cold day in April, and the clocks were striking 13. Right away, by striking 13, military time has entirely invaded the domestic sphere. It signals instantly that the old world is dead. You're thrust into a reality that is slightly, yet terribly wrong. Even time itself is dictated by the absolute power of the party. We are pulled immediately into the gritty, oppressive confines of victory mansions, a place where the human spirit goes to wither. Inside victory mansions, the environment is defined entirely by sensory deprivation and physical misery. Winston Smith's existence is marked by the smell of boiled cabbage, the dampness of old rag mats, and the biting, relentless cold of the April wind. These aren't just background details. They are the visceral, inescapable realities of daily life in Oceania. The physical texture of life is a constant gnawing protest in your bones. It's a persistent sensation of gritty dust, blunt razor blades, and crumbling infrastructure. It is a world purposefully, systematically drained of all color and warmth. Against this encroaching void, we witness the profound depths of Winston Smith's internal isolation. The act of writing the words down with Big Brother is his first desperate act of internal restoration. Purchasing a diary made of beautiful, cream-laid paper and using an archaic pen with a real nib, this isn't merely writing. It is a violent ritual of self-assertion against the void. He is a desperately isolated man attempting to anchor his existence in a timeline that the party is actively, relentlessly erasing. The moment he marks that paper, he steps over the precipice. In Oceania, there are technically no laws, and yet the state claims absolute ownership of the mind itself. This is the terrifying concept of thought crime, the essential crime that contains all other crimes within it. It's any unorthodox thought, and it is punishable by death, or more accurately, vaporization, being completely wiped from existence. Even a solitary hidden musing is a terminal offense. You don't just act against the party, you must not even conceive of acting against the party. The internal landscape of the mind is patrolled as strictly as the physical streets. This scrutiny is so absolute that the physical body itself is turned into a traitor. This is the reality of face crime. To wear an improper expression, to exhibit a nervous tic, or to show an unconscious look of anxiety is to suggest a hidden abnormality. Under the cold, inescapable gaze of the telescreen, which is the ultimate, horrifying inversion of the domestic hearth, citizens live in a state of permanent physiological stress. The panoptic state ensures that even the involuntary, automatic movements of your own nervous system are treated as acts of treason. To maintain this level of control, human empathy must be systematically eradicated, replaced entirely with a frenzied, undirected rage. We see this in the daily ritual of the 2 minutes hate. Directed against the traitor Emmanuel Goldstein and the endlessly marching columns of the Eurasian army, this event is a visceral, tribal exorcism. It's a mechanism of psychological manipulation designed to transform ordinary citizens into grimacing, screaming lunatics. The rage flows through the crowd like an electric current, a hideous ecstasy of fear and vindictiveness that bonds them entirely to the protective figure of Big Brother. We can map out the systemic reality control of Oceania by looking at the functions of its 4 towering ministries. Their names are brutal, deliberate contradictions of their actual purposes. The Ministry of Truth deals entirely in the fabrication of lies. The Ministry of Peace concerns itself with perpetual, endless war. The Ministry of Love is a windowless fortress of terror that maintains law and order through brutal torture. And the Ministry of Plenty orchestrates artificial economic starvation. This staggering contradiction is the very structural foundation of the party's dominance. Winston's own daily labor at the Ministry of Truth involves the manufacturing of ghosts. He is an architect of nothingness. Documents requiring rectification are dropped into what is known as the memory hole. This is the fiery grave of objective reality. Every record is destroyed and rewritten to perfectly match the current political dogma. And then, every rewriting is destroyed in turn. History is continuously scraped clean and reinscribed,
sent down pneumatic tubes into the enormous hidden furnaces of the ministry.
This systemic erasure creates a terrifying metaphysics. It leaves Winston with a chilling, inescapable realization. He feels as though he is wandering in the forests of the sea bottom, lost in a monstrous world where he himself is the monster. Think about what happens when the past becomes completely fluid, when objective truth is entirely erased. The present suddenly has no foundation. The party doesn't just control the future, it owns the fundamental definition of truth, turning reality itself into a mere variable of power. But the party's ultimate weapon isn't physical violence. It is the internal, psychological death of the citizen. Drawing from Orwell's appendix on the principles of Newspeak, we can see the technical, deliberate destruction of the English language. This document acts as a necropsy of human thought. The goal of Newspeak isn't to provide a medium of expression. Its singular purpose is to make all other modes of thought completely impossible.
As the philologist Syme proudly explains, Newspeak is the only language in history whose vocabulary grows smaller every year. This linguistic present operates on a diminishing taxonomy. It is specifically designed not to extend human consciousness, but to violently restrict it. Each reduction of a word is a monumental gain for the party. They're systematically shrinking the boundaries of thought until heretical ideas become literally unthinkable, simply because there are no words left to formulate them.
Consider the profound structural contrast between the two vocabularies. In Old Speak, a phrase like Communist International calls up a complex composite picture of universal human brotherhood, red flags, barricades, and vast historical struggles. It forces the mind to linger and consider. Its Newspeak equivalent, Comintern, suggests merely a tightly knit organization and a rigid doctrine. It is blunt, it is phonetic. Meaning, historical association, and emotional resonance are surgically removed, narrowing the word to an object as utilitarian and unfeeling as a wooden chair. This surgical removal of meaning is most terrifyingly evident in the B vocabulary, which is constructed explicitly for political purposes. These are the compound words: goodthink, crimthink, prolfeed, sex crime, joy camp. They are used as literal ideological bludgeons. They're welded together with a deliberate phonetic harshness. Words like inot or goodthink, designed with a willful ugliness. They encourage a gabbling, staccato style of speech, allowing citizens to spray forth orthodox opinions as automatically and thoughtlessly as a machine gun spraying bullets. The surviving words in the A vocabulary are aggressively stripped of all unorthodox or secondary meanings. Take the word free. It exists in Newspeak, but only in the sense of a dog being free from lice or a field being free from weeds. It can no longer be used in its old sense of political or intellectual freedom. Because those concepts no longer exist in society, they are necessarily nameless. The very concepts of liberty and equality are being actively, systematically deleted from the human brain. The final goal of this orthodoxy is what we might call the euphonia of the void. It aims for duck speak, literally to quack like a duck. The intention of the final version of Newspeak is to make thought entirely unnecessary, making articulate speech issue directly from the larynx, without ever involving the higher brain centers. Speech becomes a mechanical noise, completely independent of consciousness. Orthodoxy means not thinking. Orthodoxy is unconsciousness. It is the total and absolute death of the logos. The definitive date set for this total linguistic annihilation is 2050. This is the party's final countdown. By the year 2050, at the very latest, the 11th edition of the Newspeak Dictionary will be fully implemented and Old Speak will be eradicated from the earth. The last remaining link with the past will be permanently, irrevocably severed. The psychological death of language will be absolute. Not a single human being alive will be able to understand the concepts, the literature, or the freedoms of the ancient world. We are left, then, with Winston Smith's suffocating reality. He is a solitary man struggling desperately to find words for concepts that are actively being deleted from the world around him. Nothing was your own except the few cubic centimeters inside your skull. Writing in his diary is his desperate, lonely bid to defend those last few cubic centimeters. He's fighting a war of attrition to retain the final remnants of human consciousness against a regime that promises the total, absolute annihilation of the soul. The descent into this carefully constructed darkness is profound, and our examination of this absolute terror is only just beginning. The architecture of Oceania is vast, cold, and unforgiving. If language dictates the very limits of human thought, what happens to humanity when the words for freedom no longer exist? We elegantly invite you to subscribe to Masterpieces Illustrated as we prepare to venture further into the depths of Winston Smith's rebellion and face the full, terrifying response of the party
in our upcoming Part 2.
Let's step directly into the nightmare of Airstrip One. Picture a suffocating gray panopticon, a world completely defined by cold metal, inescapable surveillance, and an overwhelming sense of synthetic decay. But from inside this sterile prison of the mind, we're about to witness a sudden, visceral descent, a true awakening of the flesh. Section 1. The Golden Country. A sensory shock. I want you to leave behind the sensory deprivation of Winston's synthetic reality for a moment. Forget the vile, oily sting of Victory Gin, that rotting scent of boiled cabbage, and the endless, relentless static of the telescreen. Instead, imagine stepping right into an archetypical memory, the Golden Country. You can almost feel the crushed bluebells underfoot. Picture dappled pools of gold light. And, incredibly, the rich, totally forgotten aroma of authentic dark chocolate wrapped in actual silver paper. It's an absolute shock to the system.
Orwell writes, "A thrush pours a torrent of liquid music into the afternoon hush. It's just a bird, singing out into nothingness. No mate and no rival." But for Winston, this is a monumental experience. For the very first time in his life, he encounters a profound, unburdened silence that isn't secretly a hidden trap. It is pure, uncontrolled existence. Section 2. The political act of pleasure. High-fidelity sabotage.
Now, we need to examine the concept of sex crime. In Oceania, this encompasses all sexual misdeeds, which quite literally includes normal intercourse practiced just for its own sake. The party categorizes all unauthorized desire as treason, and the reason is simple. Intimacy creates a world of two. It forms an unauthorized, private loyalty that the state simply cannot colonize.
Therefore, the state only permits what they call good sex. This means intercourse strictly between husband and wife, solely for the purpose of begetting children and entirely devoid of any physical pleasure. This terrifying use of Newspeak is meticulously engineered to eradicate passion. By bottling up profound human instincts, the resulting sexual privation actually induces a deep psychological hysteria. And the party easily transmutes that pent-up hysteria straight into political war fever and fanatic leader worship.
Their embrace had been a battle, the climax of victory. It was a blow struck against the party. It was a political act. Think about the immense weight of those words. By claiming his own flesh and willingly yielding to sensory indulgence, Winston isn't seeking mere comfort. He is delivering the ultimate, high-fidelity strike against the entire apparatus of Ingsoc.
Section 3. The Sherrington Sanctuary. A pocket of the past. We then narrow our focus to a single, striking object, a glass paperweight gleaming softly out of the half-darkness in the shabby room above the antique shop. It's a tiny, beautifully fragile artifact of history, a quiet message from a century ago that the party has seemingly forgotten to alter. The paperweight was the room he was in, and the coral was Julia's life and his own, fixed in a sort of eternity at the heart of the crystal. This is such a desperate projection for Winston. The heavy crystal dome provides the illusion of a completely enclosed atmosphere, a safe haven where their doomed existence might somehow survive eternally, perfectly untouched. Section 4. The Illusion of Conspiracy. A deceptive oasis.
Suddenly, we are pulled into the jarring, impossible luxury of O'Brien's inner party flat. Imagine deep carpets that completely deaden the sound of footsteps, the rich, unbelievable taste of actual dark red wine, and the ultimate, unimaginable power to simply turn off the telescreen. It's a deceptive oasis, perfectly designed to lull Winston into believing that a grander, organized rebellion actually exists.
"To the past," said Winston. "The past is more important," agreed O'Brien gravely. "It's a solemn, intoxicating moment of shared defiance. But underneath the surface, they are sealing a fatal pact, built entirely on a meticulously crafted illusion. That pact is cemented by a heavy black volume, amateurly bound, The Theory and Practice of Oligarchical Collectivism, Goldstein's forbidden book. You can practically feel the physical weight and the intoxicating danger of it in Winston's hands. Yet, it serves as the ultimate false hope of a structural revolution. Section 5. The Final Rupture. The Metamorphosis of Reality. Winston and Julia share a brief, fragile bloom of hope at the window of their sanctuary. And then
An iron voice echoes suddenly from behind the steel engraving on the wall. You are the dead. It's an absolute, chilling violation of their space. The hidden telescreen has been watching them the entire time. A crash of breaking glass echoes on the hearthstone. The thought police storm the room, and that beautiful glass paperweight is violently smashed to pieces on the floor. It's a visceral moment. We are watching the literal, absolute destruction of Winston's enclosed reality. The crystal dome is utterly shattered. What follows is a terrifying physical metamorphosis. The frail, shuffling collector in a velvet jacket is completely gone. In his place stands a man with black hair, no spectacles, standing straight up. The cold, alert 35-year-old face of a thought police agent. His benevolent disguise simply falls away to reveal the cold, inescapable apparatus of the state.
Here is the truly harrowing realization. The party doesn't just watch the rebellion. It actively allows it to bloom, solely to crush it at the exact moment of highest hope. There are no private rooms in Oceania. Their beloved sanctuary was nothing more than a prolonged, heavily orchestrated trap designed to break them perfectly.
Winston's reality is now completely in ruins, and we are left with a solemn, lingering question. Will the human spirit somehow survive the harrowing darkness of the Ministry of Love? To explore the devastating conclusion of this story, we invite you to subscribe to Masterpieces Illustrated for Part 3. Until then, remember that Big Brother is watching.
Welcome to this explainer. We're diving straight into the chilling final act of George Orwell's 1984. And listen, we aren't just reviewing a story here, we are breaking down the ultimate architecture of absolute power. We are entering a space where the laws of physics, of logic, and of human emotion itself are violently overwritten by the sheer will of the state. It's time to see exactly how the party systematically dismantles the human spirit.
Here is our clinical roadmap for Winston Smith's psychological descent. We'll start with the sensory deprivation of the place where there is no darkness, examine the Inquisitor's logic, face the brutal anatomy of Room 101, visit the Chestnut Tree Cafe, and finally, decode the epilogue of Newspeak. Let's begin.
Section 1. The place where there is no darkness. We begin our descent straight into the Ministry of Love. Inside this space, the very concept of time, whether it's days, weeks, or months, is completely eradicated. We're talking about sterile, white porcelain and an unvarying white light. Imagine the sheer suffocating claustrophobia of a high-ceilinged, windowless cell. It's flooded with a cold, unforgiving brilliance that literally never turns off, all accompanied by a relentless, low humming sound. It is a sensory vacuum, specifically designed to unmoor the mind from reality. Winston Smith is starved, beaten, and left to decay. He becomes so completely disoriented that his own body starts to feel entirely alien to him. The state doesn't just imprison him, you see. It actually begins to dissolve his physical boundaries.
Section 2. The Inquisitor's logic and the theology of the boot.
Here we meet O'Brien, but we shouldn't view him as a cackling, conventional villain. He's more like a teacher or a doctor. He's a priest of power administering the terrifying theology of the party. He introduces a horrifyingly logical three-stage roadmap for torture: learning, understanding, and acceptance. You see, the party learned from the failures of past totalitarians and inquisitions. They do not create martyrs. Their goal isn't simply to kill their enemies while they are still defiant. Their goal is to completely cure them. They want to make the victim absolutely perfect before they are vaporized, leaving zero trace of rebellion behind.
O'Brien introduces something called the Metaphysics of Power, or collective solipsism. Essentially, he calmly argues that reality isn't objective. It isn't external. It only exists inside the collective, immortal mind of the party. It's a wild, truly terrifying concept. O'Brien claims that because they control the mind, they control matter itself. He literally tells Winston he could float off the floor like a soap bubble if the party wished it. Because they control human perception, they claim absolute control over the climate, gravity, and even the stars.
And this leads us directly to the infamous 2 + 2 = 5 moment. O'Brien loads up 4 fingers and demands that Winston see 5. Through the administration of sheer, blinding pain via a dial that tears the air straight from Winston's lungs, objective reality is systematically conquered. It is not just about forcing Winston to lie. The pain weaves the fingers into a dancing forest until there is a luminous, fleeting certainty where Winston genuinely sees 5 fingers. His mind has been completely breached.
So why do they do this? O'Brien provides a chilling motive. Power is not a means to create a utopia. Power is the end itself. The party seeks power entirely for its own sake. Power over the body, sure, but above all, power over the mind. It is a haunting takeaway for us today, isn't it? The idea of a world built on terror as much as triumph. An eternal, heavy boot stamping on a human face forever, just for the absolute sake of control.
Section 3. The Anatomy of Room 101. The Ultimate Friction Point.
Having utterly broken his intellect, the party now goes after Winston's soul. We descend many meters underground to the deepest cell in the facility, which asks one inescapable question. What is the worst thing in the world? The terrifying genius here is that Room 101 isn't just some static torture chamber. It uniquely tailors the unendurable to shatter the specific psychological architecture of whoever happens to be inside. Courage is completely irrelevant here. It is all about hitting an instinctual breaking point.
For Winston Smith, the absolute worst thing in the world is rats. O'Brien brings out a wire cage with a mask attachment filled with huge, starving, carnivorous rats. But to Winston, they aren't merely animals. They are the physical embodiment of his deepest, darkest nightmares. They are the roaring void of sheer panic. It's the terror of being consumed alive, the foul, musty odor of death closing in directly on his face.
As the cage clicks closer, brushing his cheek, Winston screams the only words that can possibly save him. "Do it to Julia, not me, Julia!" It is a moment of blinding panic, where he uses the woman he loves as a human shield, offering her up to be torn apart just so he can survive. By doing this, he commits what is essentially an ontological betrayal. He completely shatters his own soul to save his physical body, severing the very last tether of his humanity. The party is won.
Section 4. The Chestnut Tree Cafe. The Hollow Vessel.
We find Winston in the devastating aftermath, sitting alone in the dusty sunlight of a cafe, listening to a tinny telescreen. This beautifully illustrates the concept of ontological suicide, which is the total, absolute surrender of the self. Winston is surrounded by the sickening smell of Victory Gin. He has actually gained weight, and his physical health is seemingly returned, but this survival is just a terrifying mockery. His living body serves only as proof that his inner spirit, his ability to love, has been completely cauterized out. He's dead, really, but his body just continues to drink gin.
Staring at a chess problem in the newspaper, he thinks with a cloudy mysticism, white always mates. In no chess problem since the beginning of the world has black ever won. It perfectly symbolizes the eternal, unvarying triumph of the party over the individual. It's all arranged. When the trumpet call of victory finally sounds from the telescreen, Winston sheds gin-soaked tears. He loves Big Brother. The struggle is finished.
Finally, Section 5. The Epilogue and the Linguistic Grave.
This brings us to a stark, academic shift at the very end of the book, The Principles of Newspeak. We leave the emotional destruction of Winston Smith behind entirely. Notice the chilling detail here. This appendix is written entirely in standard English, in the past tense, analyzing Newspeak as a historical phenomenon leading up to the perfected dictionary targeted for the year 2050.
The cold clinical reality is that the sole objective of Newspeak was to narrow the range of human thought. By systematically reducing the vocabulary and deleting words entirely, rebellious thought becomes literally impossible. It is a powerful warning for us today about exactly how language shapes our reality. The terrifying suggestion here is that the language succeeded, turning Winston's profound, agonizing tragedy into nothing more than a statistical inevitability, just a mere footnote in a linguistic manual.
We are left with this final, crushing paradox. If the appendix is written in the past tense, it implies that the party and its language eventually fell. Winston died, but the principles of his destruction survived long enough to be clinically analyzed by historians. But think about it. If the very words for freedom are erased from a mind, did the human struggle ever exist at all? Thank you for exploring this with me. To continue dissecting literature's greatest architecture, please subscribe to Masterpieces Illustrated for our full trilogy compilation.